Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, the number one source for news, analysis, and discussion on the Detroit Red Wings, the NHL, and all things hockey. Here are your hosts, Ryan Hanna, Brad Crisco, and Evan Lopsinger.
Doing this podcast for so many years, in February, it'll be a decade, by the way, in case you weren't feeling old to start this year, 2025. But doing this podcast for so many years, you run the risk of repeating the same jokes. And I know we had a little bit of a stretch there where we kept making the whole New Year, same team joke. I think we accidentally used it as an episode title a couple times. Is this the first time? Probably not, now that I say it out loud. But is this the first time we actually say New Year, New Red Wings, and we mean it a little bit?
In the very literal sense of the last week, yeah, obviously, new coach, pretty big change. They've looked different in the 3 games since he's come on. If we're comparing this to last year, it's probably the first time we can say new year, different team. They're worse, so the monkey paw curls a little bit, but yeah, it's different at least.
Happy New Year, guys. Happy 2025. Having another year on this planet.
I can't believe it's almost been 10 years. That's
Isn't
absurd.
That crazy?
I did not need to know that today.
Huh. I think legally we are each other's closest friends. Like we can't even...
We're almost common law.
Oh boy. Last episode is actually really funny. There was some kind of error in editing. I might have had a few ginger ales because I was like, I want to enjoy the holidays. So I went to a social gathering. I hung out with my friends and I got back to editing and I messed something up because during the episode, it was the remote one with Max, the timing, there was like a glitch that I didn't catch. And so the timing was off. And so like 5 times in the episode, it was almost always Evan, but Evan would be finishing speaking and it would just seem like I cut him off.
People were having a field day about that with you.
It was hilarious. And I was, at first, I'm like, no, how did I mess that up? And then I went and looked, I'm like, okay, it's actually pretty funny. I'm kind of just going to leave it. So sorry for cutting you off so many times.
I don't forgive you.
I would expect nothing less. Folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Happy New Year. Another year of the Winged Wheel Podcast, another year of Detroit Red Wings hockey. And boy, did the Detroit Red Wings come into the year 2025 with as good of vibes as we could have hoped. So welcome to the show. Here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the world of the NHL, and lots more. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we're going to be talking to you about the back-to-back Detroit Red Wings wins that have happened since we last spoke to close out the year 2024. We're going to be talking about the Todd McLellan era, whether that is a new coach bump that we're seeing or whether this is a new year, new Red Wings after all. And then we're going to give you updates on the phenomenal performances by Red Wings prospects across the World Juniors, from Augustine last night, player of the game against Team Canada in that win for the States, Axel Sandin Pellikka leading the tournament, Kiiskinen. More updates on all of that, Red Wings news, etc., league news, before we jump into overtime. Before all that, 2 quick notes. First, Winged Wheel Podcast night with the Grand Rapids Griffins is Saturday, January 18th, fast approaching. Go to griffinshockey.com/WWP to get your tickets and a chance to get the sweet Winged Wheel Podcast Grand Rapids Griffins co-branded beanies. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see one on the podcast table right there. Again, those tickets are going, and once they're gone, they're gone. That event is coming in just over 2 weeks here. Secondly, the Winged Wheel Podcast is almost primarily supported by our Patreon supporters, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. If you want to join the Dub Club and get access to benefits like our Patreon exclusive Discord. In addition, you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, we give away 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game going directly to our Patreon supporters. You also get access to all of our bonus content, including our bonus overtime episodes, which record right after these main ones. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. I forgot to give the warning before we started the episode of, hey, this is a post-celebratory episode because last night was New Year's Eve, obviously. And so for us to be recording on New Year's Day, you're going to get a certain amount of, wow, these guys sound beat up. And if you're thinking that, it's true. We were doing pre-show prep and just talking, and then Evan just jumps in and goes, when are we starting?
There is only so much brain power today.
We live in different realities. You got to remember that. I was in bed and asleep before 11:30 last night.
Were you really?
Yeah. Mika, as we found out this morning when she woke up, is very sick.
Oh, don't use your kid to protect you from being a boring old man.
It's 1,000% why I'm a boring old man. So she passed out very early, which is unlike her. Crystal, I guess, just passed out. She went upstairs to, I think, have a shower or something, and then just never came back down. I go upstairs. She's KO'd in the bed. So it's me and Hank sitting on the couch watching the end of the Red Wings game, and I'm like, when this game ends, I'm going to YouTube Kids, finding some fake countdown, throwing it on, doing a big celebration with Hank, sending him to bed, and then I passed out right after him.
Do you think we can tell Brad's kids that they're watching fake countdowns and ruin his life?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, let's jump into the Red Wings game. So we actually recorded the morning that this game happened, but a 4-2 win over the Washington Capitals. And in that first period, 4 goals by the Detroit Red Wings, and encapsulated no better than Mickey Redmond saying after Lucas Raymond's goal, "What is happening?" A flurry of offense from the Detroit Red Wings, and that's all the offense they got that game, but that was enough. Alex Lyon was solid in net for them. You can only stop Alex Ovechkin from scoring for so long before he breaks through, of course, but a 4-2 win for the Red Wings. A fun performance, especially after the first game against Toronto, which had some warts, and this one was their first win under Todd McLellan.
Yeah, the Red Wings have had way too many sleepy starts this year, so it was... I think Mickey was right. It was jarring seeing the inverse. Just they came out with their hair on fire, and it wasn't like one of those games we've seen where a team's getting outshot 20-5, but 4 of the 5 shots have gone in. The Red Wings were actually taking it to the Capitals, one of the top teams in the league this year. It was relieving, fun, exciting. A whole lot of words we haven't used this year to watch the Red Wings. It was remarkable.
And it's not like it was a perfect performance start to end either. Like that, by no means was that the case. But at the same time, it was the kind of thing where you're like, even with the warts this team has, this is what you can't expect this every game. You can't expect every game to have a 4-goal period. But at the same time, you know this team is capable of some fun, some offense, some kind of performance in bursts like this. So yeah, it was part of the feeling that started for Red Wings fans where you're like, okay, this is better. This is improvement this feels kind of sustainable. Again, not that they're going to score 4 goals all the time, but that the effort is going to be there that way.
Yeah, we know there's not going to be a lot of perfect games, especially for a team that's not a President's Trophy caliber team. But this is a nice improvement, a nice change from the Red Wings that we've been witnessing for 9 years.
Almost 10.
The slow starts have just been so painful. And to see a team come out with some urgency playing against a very strong Washington Capitals team, it's been extremely refreshing, even in the short amount of time it's been with Todd McLellan as the head coach.
So the game opened with a 2-0 lead for Detroit. First, a Ben Sherratt shot that went in that was eventually changed to an Alex DeBrincat goal, one of his 2 for the game. Patrick Kane on the power play as he scored his 6th of the season, and that was a 2-0 lead for Detroit within the first 6.5 minutes or so there. Ovi scored, but then Alex DeBrincat again, this time from Patrick Kane. Patrick Kane's 1,300th point and Alex DeBrincat's 15th goal of the season. Who else other than DeBrincat for Kane to reach that milestone with, of course. Really nice play. And Lucas Raymond made it 4-1 at the end. And Lucas Raymond made it 4-1 about 14 minutes into the first period. And that was the end of Detroit's scoring for that game. But again, a 4-2 win. And it was it perfect? No. But the Red Wings did what they needed to do to hang on. And they got a good performance from Alex Lyon, who's finding some form again for the Red Wings. So all in all, the Red Wings fandom was abuzz. We got a lot of comments because the episode with Max posted that evening, but we had mentioned that we recorded before the game. We got a lot of comments saying, why did you guys record before? Like, it's the holidays. This is a timing thing. But I was laughing. I think I messaged in the chat. I'm like, yeah, of course this was going to happen. We should just record before every game. So inevitably something exciting happens.
It's kind of like that one game where it's a predictive game designed to make you look stupid.
Mm-hmm.
So basically we record, everything we say is immediately wrong and stupid, and people get more enjoyment out of it because of how wrong and stupid it is.
We're doing it just to kind of reverse jinx, as we have been wont to do unintentionally sometimes. First line, Joe Veleno, kind of working.
I dig it. He's one of the few forwards on this team fast enough to keep up with Larkin and Raymond. Obviously, I don't think anybody's going to confuse him with someone who has the same level of skill or hockey IQ that those two have, but he doesn't slow them down.
Yeah.
Which outside of DeBrincat, everybody else they've tried on that line has slowed them down, and it hasn't worked. If McLellan's MO is to spread the talent out a bit and get someone to play with Kane, i.e. DeBrincat, someone's got to go up there and fill the role, and Veleno has been the best player on that line outside of DeBrincat all season.
It worked, and you mentioned pre-show, Evan, that it's not asking him to be center, so that is probably an advantage there, and it's why. So we'll see how long it lasts, but it's why I think this is a little bit more advantageous for him this time. He's not being asked to do anything outside of his skill set, and as long as he can keep supporting that way, then whatever you can do to get this offense clicking in any kind of a different way, you're going to do it and ride that momentum.
And it's good to see with McLellan that good performances get rewarded, because I think by the end of the Capitals game he had 5 points in his last 7 games, which as far as Joe Veleno standards go, that's a heater. And when you're performing at that level, you get rewarded.
Detroit comes into New Year's Eve, high off that win, playing the Pittsburgh Penguins again at the LCA. And not the same kind of performance, but still another 4-2 win as the Red Wings wrapped up 2024. And you mentioned pre-show, Brad, that game felt like it came in waves, up and down for Detroit. But even more than the Washington game, I thought that was the perfect microcosm of what a good result that's realistic for the Red Wings is this season. You know, the goalie shows up, the team has ebbs and flows that are going to come based on what the roster is, but at the same time, the effort is there, and they show up in their own way.
Yeah, there was a moment in this game where I was really curious to see if McLellan could do something Lalonde hadn't really been able to do all season, where first 10 minutes of the first period, the Red Wings were taking it to Pittsburgh pretty good. Like, I know the score wasn't as lopsided as the Washington game, but you know, by the time the Yanni Berger's breakaway goal happened, you could definitively say Detroit was running show to that point. And then we'll call it roughly second half of the first period, wheels came right off the bus. Pittsburgh was taking it right to him, right to the buzzer. Detroit wasn't able to generate anything. They had a huge shot lead that dissipated. And we've seen dozens of times this year where the Red Wings went into a period after losing all momentum, and that was just the rest of the game. Like, that game was done. You could sense it 10 minutes into the game. And McLellan had to get that team to wake the hell up at intermission and come out early in the second period and show better than they showed at the end of the first period. Not let that same play translate. And I don't think it was a masterpiece in the second period by the Red Wings, but it was a hell of a lot better than they were going into intermission. So whatever he did, it worked to a decent extent, which is something that Lalonde hadn't really accomplished a whole hell of a lot this year.
As Brad mentioned, Jonatan Berggren had a breakaway goal off a nice feed from Vladimir Tarasenko, who found Berggren streaking down, made no mistake on the breakaway. Electric goal, and Berggren broke a goal-scoring drought of his own. And then after Drew O'Connor tied it up for Pittsburgh in the second period, Patrick Kane scored on the power play, his 7th goal of the season. I honestly don't think, it was a snipe, but at the same time, you were like, Ned should have had that one.
That was a weird one. When you looked at the way it came off Kane's stick, and it almost looked like it started wobbling before he shot it, which is weird to describe, but that was one you probably want the goalie to have, but understandable why it probably handcuffed him a little bit.
Patrick Kane also had infinite amount of time.
So much
Pittsburgh
space.
Penguins penalty kill forgot that Patrick Kane exists, and he could just pick a spot, and he made no mistake.
Yeah, he's not like the biggest shooter in the world, but with that much space, even someone who's not Alex Ovechkin is going to find a way to get it done.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Team Canada was just watching Pittsburgh at that moment, and then they sent 6 players to the puck in the last minute of the game because it was the same night. So,
yeah,
who says other hockey players don't learn things from each other?
Yeah, they wanted to idolize Sidney Crosby, but the problem is they picked up on the rest of the Penguins. Before the Compher goal, Mo Seider with a massive save. He's had a lot of little stretches here where he had, 2 or 3 big blocks at the end of a game or whatever it is. But this one against Pittsburgh, a huge save in the crease. He showed up that way. Simon Edvinsson showed his nasty side, throwing Bunting to the ice. Bunting, Olympian level diver as well. So I think he went down a little bit too easy there. But those two, man, especially with Seider making that big save, I don't want to hear any questions about, they're finally playing. No, they've been good the whole time. Shut up. Shut up.
I understood that reference.
Yeah. Yeah. But that was it. That was a like if that had gone in, that changed the course of the game. And I love Alex Lyon giving him the pat to say thanks. So goalie showing appreciation. But that pairing, whether they're on the ice together or recently as they've been separated, like how many times have we said this season, if they hadn't made that play, the course of this game goes differently.
Well, if anybody ever questions the wide range of skills that Mo Seider possesses, they've got him running the top power play, the shutdown defender. Now he's moonlighting as goalie.
He can do it all, man.
Now he just needs to play second line center, and oh my God, we're set.
He can't do everything. Hold on, just
but
a
maybe.
minute. He is big enough to be two people, so I think he's approximately 1.89 Brads tall. So,
to be fair, we're not entirely sure he isn't two people stacked on top of each other in a trench coat yet.
But no one go check because it's working for us so far. JT Compher buries a puck that's floating around the crease to make it 3-2 to give Detroit the lead. And then in my mind, an empty net goal is almost never the play of the game. But how do you not look at Lucas Raymond and the selfless play he made to give Dylan Larkin the puck to score on the empty net to break his goalless drought as the play of the game? Like, what? Every Red Wings fan watched that, knew what it meant, and you have to imagine Dylan Larkin appreciated it too. Stick the A on Lucas Raymond's jersey and never take it off. God, I love that guy.
And you can even tell he was loaded up for the shot when he got on his stick, and then he's like, wait a minute. All right, he can have it.
It was the right play, and it's like the
I'll argue.
ramifications of that.
If you take the context out of it, I'll argue that was the wrong play. Coaches, if you pass up a look on an empty net with defenders anywhere near you, they will crucify you. But given the context of what was going on, I think everybody in the building agreed, yeah, that was the play.
If Larkin doesn't bury that there, then it's a different topic of conversation. But I mean, selfless play, it went in, so who cares?
You know how this goes for NHL players too. It's not that Larkin doesn't know how to shoot lately. It's you get snake bitten and you get in your own head, and all you need to do sometimes is see the puck go in for you once, and then you're off the schneid. Like that. Raymond had his own goalless drought.
We're Philip Zadina survivors. We understand what it means to be snake bitten.
Yes.
I think he's on pace for almost 25 goals in Switzerland this year, for whatever that's worth.
That translates. It's worth 3 goals in the NHL.
I know,
Brad. That's what that's worth in Switzerland.
I just saw his stats and I just laughed. I was like, I was happy for him. I'm like, oh, of course. Good. He found it. Good.
He saw how much a chocolate bar costs in Switzerland. He's like, oh, I need to score a lot more goals to live here.
But if Larkin kind of gets a little bit of his touchback and the production comes in the form of goals and not just assists, and he finds the form that he had. I don't even want to say he finds the form. It's not like he's lost his game. It's just a goal drought. He's not looked like the best version of himself for this stretch here, but if we start in 2025 and Larkin is back to his self, like that is a moment that everyone's going to look back to. And all it is an empty net goal. Sealed the game, 600th win for Todd McLellan as head coach. The goal droughts for Larkin and Berggren were broken. Massive plays by Seider and Edvinsson. Like just a fun win overall. And, you went into the Christmas holiday break with terrible vibes after that loss against St. Louis. You now went into New Year's Eve celebrating the ball drop with incredible vibes if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan because of those 2 wins.
It's almost like they should have fired Derek Lalonde sooner.
And we said it in the episodes following the firing. Like, it feels unfair to say, but it's one of those thankless, not zero-sum situations where fault doesn't matter. It's what you need to do. And I agree with you, Evan. It's like, yeah, this is the change you need to make.
It sounds rude and mean to say that, but since the difference has been so night and day that it almost feels like, yeah, that should have happened sooner.
Well, let's talk about it because we are seeing what looks like a different Detroit Red Wings team. And I want to qualify this by saying I don't want us to get too far ahead of ourselves, not just talking here, but as a fan base and thinking like this is going to be the performance you see every night. Because if you look at individual stretches within the games, as Brad outlined, the flaws that come out in this team, it's not going to change overnight with this coach. You still have the problems that are persisting based on the mentality. It's going to take a long time to correct. And you have the problems that are sourced by the fact that the roster is not ideal, to put it lightly. So none of that has changed yet. But what have we seen? We've seen effort. We've seen tenacity. We've seen a willingness to believe that you're still in the game and grind and win and put your body in lanes. And, you have guys who are producing and battling harder than we've seen all year. We're seeing a mix-up of lines and guys who are being re-energized by different opportunities. And these are the kind of things that I think you can expect to be sustainable, even if the results aren't going to be there every game. And that seems realistic and not crazy to say over the rest of the season.
Well, there's two things that really jump out to me so far. One, actually, it tied in really well. I was listening to Expected by Whom on the way over today. They were talking to Rick Bowness. And one thing that Rick brought up, which I thought directly translated to what's happening in Detroit right now, because they asked him a question about, when you come in, what do you switch up system-wise? What do you switch up game to game versus the team you're playing? Do you go with a new system relative to your opponent, or do you, just really enforce the way we play? And he talked about, well, you're not going to be able to change too much game to game. And if something's not working, is the system not working, or are the players not executing it correctly? Is the effort within the system good enough to execute the system? He's like, so our game-to-game adjustments weren't changing from like a hypothetical 1-2-2 to a 2-1-2 or a 1-3-1. It was, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, do your damn job better. The effort and the structure and the commitment to what you're supposed to do out there is what has to change. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting since McLellan's been brought in, is they haven't looked like they're doing anything dramatically different. It's just the discipline and the effort within that structure that is being executed better to this point. And the other thing too, and this is a tougher thing as time goes on, but everybody who's listening right now who's ever played hockey knows coaches over time, they get their guys, the boys they love, and fairly or unfairly, they never get punished. They never get bumped from the lineup. They never get scratched. They never get demoted, whatever it might be. And we could tell Lalonde had some boys, which is fine. Most coaches do. But under a new coach, nobody's safe. And everybody's playing like they know they're not safe. Like, if I don't make a good early impression on this new coach, I might not be a regular in the lineup. So you can see there's that other level of, I'll call it urgency. Fear might even be a word. Like, they're playing like their jobs are on their line because, they might be.
Well, and the other thing is you're going from someone who was a long-term assistant coach to someone who's coached over 1,100 games. Like, you can't. There's nothing he hasn't seen that can fool him. Or you get the substitute teacher, and all of a sudden you're not getting your work done and stuff like that. So you can't trick Todd McLellan into whatever you've got going on right now. Like, he's seen it all, and he's bringing a different message. He's obviously a much more emotional coach than Derek Lalonde was, and you can see it already in the first few games.
And whether or not that's right across the board is a different question, because not every coach in the league needs to be emotional. But this team, very obviously, they lacked passion, they lacked the energy, they lacked the fire, and so you needed someone to reinvigorate them. And Brad's right. It had to go hand in hand with these players having, the fear of God put into them. They believe they're playing for their jobs right now. Like, when a coach gets fired, players are on notice, and that's across the NHL. That's across pro sports. So that is helping the situation too, but that's part of why you brought in someone so different than Derek Lalonde in Todd McLellan. Now, call me a little bit of a downer here, but I do expect things to taper off at some point in terms of the intensity of the change that we're seeing, because at the end of the day, you still have the roster you have, and I don't expect all these line combinations and pairings to work in perpetuity just because you look at the roster you have, it's not good enough to compete for a playoff spot, really. But it doesn't mean things are going to be bad. It's more that it's going to be acceptable. Like, the new coach bump is a thing, but eventually that fades. And if it's not, then, all the power to Todd McLellan, and that's great. I'm not saying that's not possible, but I think it's most likely that things will fade a little bit. But I think it's important to remember that that's not something to be down about. That's something to be expected. And we say all the time, if the Red Wings come out this season and they play to, most of their potential as a roster and the roster just doesn't stack up, but the energy and the effort is there and they're playing the right way, then yeah, no fan should be cheering losses, but it's a lot more agreeable than what we were seeing this season. Like I watched those 2 games and even parts of the Toronto game, and I was like, at least it's not soul sucking. It doesn't take the life out of you to watch, because how often this season were we watching hockey games and we were like,
what is this?
Am I in a fugue state? Like, what's going on? I woke up and it's the 3rd period. Like, I can't believe I'm actually storing information from this game. And it does look different. I'm not saying 100% better. It just looks like it has some life to it.
There was more than a few times this year where I'd be watching the game and then I'd go to check something on my phone. Then I realized I haven't looked up from my phone in 10 minutes. And some obnoxious commercial comes on and I go, what the hell's happening? I don't know what the score is. I don't know what happened.
You can actually time travel when you watch the Red Wings.
Yes. And then all of a sudden the game comes back on. The shots have barely changed. The score hasn't changed. And I didn't miss.
Well, think of how, if that's boring for you, imagine how it feels for the players.
Oh, even worse, the fans in the arena.
Yeah, they pay big bucks to go to those games. I'm sure Chicago Blackhawks fans also feel that way after yesterday as well. It's just soul-sucking for everyone.
Yeah. So again, for all the reasons that we just laid out and more, Evan, you're absolutely right. This is probably something that should have happened a bit earlier.
And
I say that as someone who is staunchly against even the idea of Lalonde being on the hot seat preseason. I was like, I don't understand that. Boy, was I wrong.
Yeah. And for me, like you said, Ryan, the season can go however it goes at this point for me. They finish dead last or they make the playoffs at this point. I don't care. But it's the effort and the commitment to attempting to win games and the competitiveness that is the most important at this point.
Are the Red Wings back? Probably not the way you're thinking, but are they back a little bit? I think so. Fair to say, enter Todd McLellan. We'll see how it goes. More on the Red Wings back after this. Welcome back. All right, some more Red Wings notes before we jump into the World Juniors. First, it was reported by Elliot Friedman. They were talking, he mentioned that Detroit was in on Steven Stamkos during free agency. That's not news to anyone. We talked about that at the time. It's been out there. How I think the Stamkos thing went down, per my understanding, is that they were in on him. He was one of a few different guys that they were very heavily interested in, but I think the pricing just got out of hand. And that is like the most plain Jane, boring answer. I know there's a couple other things floating around, but I think it's legitimately just, this is not a reasonable, dollar and or term to sign these guys at, Stamkos being one of them. We're not going to get caught up in this rat race and Franz Nielsen or Justin Abdelkader or whatever ourselves, because we already have enough bad contracts on this team, which, believe it or not, Steve Yzerman and the Red Wings do understand. And we talked at the time after free agency, like, for all the problems that exist, we're happy that it wasn't compounded. But that some people were asking about it, so I just wanted to call attention to it. I think they were in, and it wasn't just Stamkos. I think some of the other medium to big names that were out there, Detroit was very heavily interested, but either a mix of the guys just didn't want to come for a price that was reasonable and made sense for the long-term future, or the price that they got, it was just like, yeah, no, we are not paying that.
This could be a good lesson where Detroit doesn't have to suffer the consequences, because how does that Stamkos contract look right now?
Oh, man. Like, Nashville is... Well, New York has taken over as the most horrific story of the league so far, but Nashville, my goodness, this is not the year that they thought they'd be having.
Vladimir Tarasenko has been plainly bad this year. I am much happier we have that contract than Stamkos's.
Yep, 100%. And Friedge said, like, you're not signing Tarasenko that late into free agency if you weren't trying to replace the scoring that you lost and the guys that you lost elsewhere, like with Stamkos. And again, none of this is like groundbreaking stuff. It's been reported on. We talked about it over the summer, but yeah, it's just logic that's just being put together here.
And it's good that Steve had a ceiling on those negotiations, because while we are big proponents of overpaying for talent, not 33-year-old talent, or however old Stamkos is now. Like, it's the mid-20s, Mitch Marner, Mikko Rantanen age talent.
Yeah, and even with Rantanen, like a bit older than that, but at the same time, you're like, where is he as a player right now versus Stamkos, who is being accused of being a power play merchant? Stamkos is 35 in February, so...
Oh my God.
Yeah, Evan, that's It's got to be.
Why are you looking at me? I didn't ask for any of this.
No, I'm starting off the year with violence because it appeared that I just kept interrupting you last episode. I thought I'm just going to lean into being rude to Evan.
That's right.
This episode, Ryan's going to do the same thing to your audio, but splice in the late 90s rock. It doesn't matter.
I actually screw myself over by doing this because off air, Evan is definitely the meanest of the three of us to the other two. But on air, I just lean into this whole bullying everything, which is not reflective of reality at all. I don't know why.
Your reality.
Oh, okay. All right. Victim Evan over
That's
here.
That's right.
Elsewhere in the Red Wings world, Ondrej Becher is signed to a 3-year ELC. Not the season start that he wanted with Grand Rapids, still finding his feet and getting into games and stuff, but he signs his entry-level contract 3-year there. So just some minor Red Wings news to update you on. And now the World Juniors.
This will be calm and rational, I'm sure.
Well, when we're talking about the Red Wings prospects, it will be very.
Okay, you know what? I actually have to say, we're going to start off with Trey Augustine. We'll cover the not the biggest story in the World Juniors, but the loudest story because of Canadian hockey media after we talk about the Red Wings prospects. But while we're jumping into Trey Augustine here, I have to open with, it rules so hard that they play Freebird after an American goal. That is so good, man. I don't care who you root for. You hear that, you're like, hell yeah.
Nothing is better than that.
That's freedom, baby.
It's so good, especially considering when was the last time Canada had a good World Juniors goal song?
I can't even think of one.
They're all garbage. Heave Away was okay because it was out east, but I don't even remember what song it is this year, but it's awful.
It's not Freebird, I'll tell you that much.
Nothing tops Freebird outside of Eminem.
Trey Augustine, player of the game for Team USA, 38 saves, monster performance. And the amount of every time this happens, like Trey Augustine goes off or Sebastian Cossa goes off, and you start to see messages and tweets and have people texting saying, does Detroit actually have an embarrassment of riches in goalie prospects? And you're like, yeah, they're both that good. And they're not even the same kind of goalie too. Because Augustine, he's what's his path? The UC Saros path. Not the size that people want in the modern NHL, but that dude is the truth. What a performance for him for the States.
Oh, he's absolutely electric. For such a calm, structured goalie, he still knows how to make those big side-to-side saves, and he had a couple against Canada. And Canada's a little guilty of being a very perimeter-heavy team, but they were getting to the middle a little more this game. And of all those 38, 39 saves, however many he made, there was more than a few 5-bell saves in there. So it was good to see him because he had a pretty weak tournament going into that. People were wondering what was up with him, and not that he was bad, but he wasn't good.
He had a pretty rough game against Germany, and he was coming from college hockey where he's undoubtedly the best goalie in the NCAA. Kind of lays an egg against Germany, so you're like, oh man, what's really going on? But man, has he just proven that he is a gamer, because that performance last night was something to watch.
And you're right, coming into that, was it his best tournament? No, and there were those questions, but what a way to dispel that by the New Year's Eve game in Canada, beating Canada and upsetting them even more and setting the entire Canadian hockey media world alight. That is, the lights are on, everyone's looking at you. Based on the performances so far, there might be some expectations that you crumbled and you just showed up. That's a big dog move. And that stuff matters to coaches, GMs, scouts. They're like, of all the positions, goalies are the ones where you're looking more about their mental game than anything else, and he showed up in the biggest possible way.
The games only really get harder in the tournament, right? The U.S. started off against an extremely weak Germany team, and that is confidence shaking for a goalie when you let in 4 against a team like that. And he's just really rebounded and brought his game right back to where it was, and has all about the big moments so far.
If Team USA continues to advance and he's the story, it just further enhances the storyline that this is just Detroit Red Wings prospects of the tournament, because who's leading the World Juniors right now in points other than defenseman Axel Sandin Pellikka? 4 goals, 4 assists, 8 points through 4 games is a +7. Do you need any more reason to be excited about this kid?
Between Augustine, Sandin Pellikka, Seider, Edvinsson, Kosa. This team is set on that half of the ice.
Yeah.
Like they've got a million depth defensemen who will be able to fill up the 5-6 spot. We've talked at length about the 4 spot someone's going to have to plug in there. But if that's your only concern on that half of the ice for the future, you're pretty well set. Because, like Ryan didn't misspeak. Axel Sandin Pellikka isn't just leading defensemen in scoring in the World Juniors. He's leading the whole damn tournament, forwards included. He's looked calm. He's looked confident. He's been good in his defensive zone. When that puck's on his stick, he's making something happen almost every time. Just unreal. And with the uncertainty around the USA's top line right now, the uncertainty around Canada as a whole, going into the medal round, Sweden just might be the favorites at this point. You could at least make a very, very coherent argument for it.
Oh, absolutely. And we said this coming into the tournament, there's no runaway favorite based on, the roster decisions that Canada made and how strong Team USA looked, and with the performances you've seen so far from Sweden. Yeah, absolutely. They could be considered.
I think the favorite in this tournament would be all the players Canada didn't bring if they built a team.
Oh. You think, actually, you know what? Let's give Kiiskinen his flowers. Scott Wheeler had a good article about Kiiskinen that we'll link to, but nice to see him get recognition as well. 3 goals through 4 games for Finland, and one of those prospects he's just been hot all year since he was acquired in the Gibson trade. The Red Wings have been thrilled with what he's done, playing in a pro league, and has continued to produce at least somewhat here in the World Juniors.
That back foot 1T he had yesterday was sick. Do you know how hard of a shot that is?
No, because I can't pull it off.
It's like the hockey.
No idea.
It's the hockey equivalent of a fadeaway, and he just nuked it from the point. And he's not even a defenseman.
Yeah.
It was sick. Kiiskinen's a fun one for me because I don't think he's got top 6 skill relative to the NHL level, but he's got a lot of skill. But he's so fast, so energetic, has such a high compete level, and more than enough skill. I think you're looking for that, prototypical 3rd, 4th line energy guy with a bit of scoring touch in the NHL. He's got a real good track to be one of the guys. Imagine if Darren Helm could finish. That's kind of what I'm seeing from Kiiskinen so far, and it's really damn exciting.
Starting off the year by evoking the hatred and the anger of the Darren Helm Stan Club.
I used him as a positive there.
If he could finish.
That's a backhanded compliment.
To be fair,
even a backhand right into the goalie's chest, you mean?
Into the 3rd row.
Even the most diehard Helm fans, they know.
Oh, we all watched it, yeah.
Yeah, we know.
But I agree, though, because what did we watch the Red Wings this year? What the biggest complaint, or one of the biggest complaints, is that this team is slow. Like, they can't score and they're slow. You want guys who can move and have at least some semblance of the ability to produce. So, yeah, if Kiiskinen turns out to break all expectations and he's a top 6 guy, amazing. But even if he just brings that kind of production and energy to your middle or bottom 6, that's not nothing. Like, that's not something that's irrelevant. You need that. This team needs that. And this team needs to get faster, and it needs to get, more skilled and have more ability to produce in its depth. And so you look at Kiiskinen and you're like, hell yeah. The Red Wings did trade away a prospect that some people were excited about in Gibson, and we won't talk about what happened with the rest of the assets in that trade for right now. But Gibson doesn't profile, he's a defenseman, first off, but doesn't profile as a guy who's going to bring a ton of offense. Does Kiiskinen? Not necessarily, but Brad just talked about the embarrassment of riches that you have on that end of the ice for the Red Wings system. So if you're a Red Wings fan, you're seeing Kiiskinen and you're like, nice find.
And anybody who's been watching Kiiskinen and Gibson this tournament is probably feeling pretty good about that trade right now.
So we'll see how the tournament unfolds, but so far, if you're a Red Wings fan, you are thrilled. So far, if you're a fan of Latvia or Team USA, you're thrilled. If you're watching Canadian hockey, you're 1, unsurprised, thoroughly unsurprised, and 2, I don't know. I personally am laughing. I think you're going to make the decisions you made. You're like, all right, let's see how this goes, because I can't imagine it going well. And boy, did Canada look unimpressive. How many times this tournament?
Every game?
Yeah. Awful performances. From coaching down to execution, down to the undisciplined penalties, you have this, it's in your home country. You're recognized as the team that could bring in the most talent if you want to, and you just choke it away like that. It's pathetic.
This is every American's favorite segment on the Winged Wheel podcast. 3 Canadians shitting on Canada.
Yeah.
And they deserve it. And, I'm saying this as a dad, but I'm sure you've seen examples of it in public or with your friends' kids where you just look over at a child and they're doing something incredibly stupid. And the best course of action is to let it play out.
I've been on a golf trip recently that it extends beyond children.
Yeah, fair enough. And then
Was it you?
I will neither confirm nor deny.
Oh, okay, because I did see you at your bachelor party.
I can't. Yeah, well, if there's anything that's true about this, I can't stop it when it's happening. So
You might have to be filled in the next day.
yes.
So to finish my analogy, and you see the negative outcome at the end of that tunnel, and you go, let it happen. They get hurt. You look at them and go, and what have you learned?
Yeah.
That, I feel like, is this tournament for Canada because their roster decisions were baffling at best. Hockey Canada has this habit of, we're going to take grinders and PKers over available skill guys who are obviously better hockey players, but they don't have the quote-unquote profile we're looking for. And it bites them in the ass time and time again. The 98 Olympics is my favorite example of this, where Rob Zaminer made a Canadian Olympic team. And here we are, almost 30 years later, looking at the same damn issues where 4 of the top 10 picks aren't there. The CHL leading scorer isn't there. The WHL leading scorer at the time isn't there. The reigning CHL defenseman of the year isn't there. And now you're watching this team. They couldn't score against Germany. They couldn't score against Latvia. They couldn't score against the States. But they brought all these gritty grinders and PKers, and their penalty kill sucks.
I think for me,
hold on. I've learned this. I've heard this one before.
I think the biggest indictment is on the adults in this situation.
Yes.
There's been some very poor performances from Canadian players, but you expect that kind of stuff every single tournament. For me, it's, you got to set these kids up for success, and the Hockey Canada as an organization does not do that at any level. And Dave Cameron is a terrible coach, and he just doesn't set these kids up for success. And he doesn't even back them in the media after the games. And he's got horrific quotes about how he's not going to, make any changes. He doesn't care that they took all these penalties. He's tried nothing, and he's all out of ideas.
Yeah.
It's just, this one is on the adults for me.
If you're honestly, if you're Team USA, you're thrilled. You're loving this, as Brad mentioned.
That yesterday was the biggest plant the flag moment for American hockey in quite a while.
Absolutely. And as they should enjoy it, they deserved it. I will say, as a hockey fan, I miss when those two teams were separated by a hair at best, and those New Year's Eve games were like appointment watching. Coming into this, I'm like, there is zero shot Canada wins. And they're not proven wrong at all. So good on Team USA, and I agree with you, Brad. Like, the worst thing that could happen for this tournament right now is for Canada to, go by Czechia and somehow, because they'll have Czechia in the quarterfinals, and then if they win, they play the winner of Finland and Slovakia.
I don't want to say it's an easy path, but you don't run into America or Sweden in that route.
The states have to play, like, if the states beat Switzerland and Sweden beats Latvia, that's US-Sweden in the semifinals, and that should be a gold medal game in my mind.
That should be the gold medal game. And yeah, again, for the betterment of the rivalry between the States and Canada, Canada has to stay good. They are the rich kid who was born into a ton of money. This team was born into a pool of 80 players that they could have chosen, that they could have sent to this tournament and been competitive. But they did not come close to choosing the right 20, but because it's Canada and they have so many, they're always going to have more than a puncher's chance. And USA built a very skilled team. They took the best players available to them. Yeah, you can always debate the bottom 2 or 3 picks on a roster, but that's all you should be debating. Canada, we could make a case for their bottom 4 defensemen and their bottom 6 forwards of what the hell are you doing? It's maddening.
All right, let's move back to the NHL here. At the bottom of the Metro Division is New York.
Talking about the adults in the room screwing it up.
New York. And no, I'm not just talking about like Manhattan. I mean the New York Islanders.
Well, you're right. It's New York and then New York.
Yeah, like it's just, it's terrible. And the New York, like the Islanders, this isn't a massive surprise to people. Like that roster had to eventually not somehow outperform their means eventually. But the New York Rangers went from near the top of the Metro to now the very bottom of the Metro division. They are 2-8 in their last 10. The whole team is crumbling. You have Larry Brooks saying the players have given up on each other, the fans, the team, the city.
Sean Avery says he's going in to take over the team.
Well, and you have people thinking, oh, is that maybe not a bad idea? Like,
you know what? We should try that.
The New York Rangers, this unraveling.
I've never seen a team self-sabotage like this.
Yeah, it's the common denominator here is the owner, right? Like I get the pressure of a big market, but this is like the Toronto Maple Leafs if Toronto Maple Leafs ownership was as loudly involved as Dolan is. And to me, like when they lost Seider and he was no longer managing up to Dolan, as has been talked about quite a bit here, like the vibes are at an all-time low of what I've seen in the modern NHL. They're not this bad of a team. And now you have Lindgren throwing Bennett into your own goalie and Shesterkin's on IR with an upper body injury. So from bad to worse, but oh man, is this team in the basement's basement.
It's dire. I agree with you. I think it's probably Jimmy Dolan that's the issue here, but we don't know how much of this is Drury just thinking this is the best course of action. Like, we talk about how Vegas is ruthless, but like the Rangers are trying to be the same way, but with no tact and no real formal plan, it seems, and no graceful way of handling it, just by sending hand grenade after hand grenade into the room, forgetting that you're the reigning President's Trophy winners. Like, a shakeup, sure, you can make a couple tweaks, but man, you want to know how you know it's bad? You know what's a thought that went through my head when I saw the standings with the Islanders and the New York Rangers there? And I've been to New York City. I love New York City, one of my favorite places on earth. So much fun. Love the people there. It's awesome. If you're from New York right now, your only thought is, thank God for the Knicks.
I don't understand that reference, but
First time that sentence is ever spoken.
Like, the Knicks are historically like terrible.
Okay.
Like, at least in our lifetime, they've been mostly bad since Ewing retired. The three sports happening right now in the city of New York: hockey, football, and basketball. The Knicks are good.
I know the Jets are bad.
The Jets are bad. The Giants are worse.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then you have the Islanders and the Rangers. It is dark.
You have the
New York.
Knicks and the Mets giving New York good vibes right now.
Oh, wow.
Wait, weren't the Yankees in the World Series?
Yeah, but they
Kind
literally dropped the ball, Evan. They
Yeah.
literally
They
dropped-
did. I did see that. Yes. Yes, I did.
It's January 1st. What a reference, Ryan.
Thank you. Yeah. Oh,
You didn't mean to. I know you did.
No,
great.
I did, but it's not mine because I saw all over Twitter people are like, if you start the World Series game where where Judge dropped the ball at this time, he'll drop the ball at the exact moment the ball drops. And I'm like, God, that is hysterical, and that is as ruthless as New York is with sports. But yeah, like the Rangers.
Hold
right
on,
now-
I have to make the obvious joke, or else I wouldn't be a good fan if I didn't do it. There's one truly elite team in New York right now. The Buffalo Bills.
That's enough
Good
out of
Lord.
you. That's
Just
enough
edit
out
that
of
out.
you. Yeah. Take Brad out of here. But the Rangers, and like you have Mika Zibanejad, who looks like all-time low vibes.
He looks like he's ready to cry after some shifts.
full no move clause, so good luck moving him. And
Well, even if he didn't, nobody's touching it. Like, how much would you have to give up to unload that contract right now?
would you take a free Zibanejad with some money retained?
How much?
What's his contract again?
8.5 through 2029, 2030.
So the best you can
Oh,
get him at
no.
is 4.25.
He's 31 years old right now.
4.25, I would certainly think about it.
I feel like
No, they're not retaining half and paying
for free.
Yeah.
No, yeah. I think if they were willing to, you could throw him in that sheltered Thomas Vanek third line role power play merchant, and he'd do well in that. But I think that's all he's really going to do well at this point.
He's Detroit's second line center right now.
Okay, that's more an indictment on the Red Wings than anything else. But yeah, no, if the Red Wings, okay, here's one for you. I haven't thought about this. The Rangers give you Lafreniere, but you have to take Zibanejad at full pop.
Oh, yeah.
That you're adding 15 mil to your books, though.
16 mil, almost 16
Yeah.
million.
Well, you gotta either way. You gotta dump money somewhere.
They're
right?
not. They would never do that.
They would never do that.
No.
But I'm just trying to where's Zibanejad's value line these days?
I think Lafreniere's on a rocket ship upwards right now. I would be very. I think I could make that work.
The fact we have to think about it.
No, but what are they
telling.
going to do there? I just don't understand what the Rangers are going to do because they're so locked in, and you can't just. You know what's going to happen, and I'm sorry to say this out loud, but they're going to.
I know what you're going to say. Shut up.
They're going to suck this year, and they're going to go into the draft lottery, and they're going to get James Higgins. That's what's going to happen. They're going to get an American hero to save them. They're going to get James Higgins, and it's going to suck for the entire league. And they're probably going to ruin James Higgins too.
He did look good in the red, white, and blue last night.
How about just red and white?
Please.
The New York Rangers are terrible. How about going up the standings? We talked about, Ullmark doing a lot of this, but Ottawa is 7-3 in their last 10, and they are in the second wildcard spot right now.
Listen to me, Ryan, right now. It's January 1st. We've been as positive as we can be on the Red Wings. We've been realistic about them. We've dumped all over the city of New York. All things I love. I am not starting off the year by giving Ottawa their flowers. I can't do it. I have to start this year with some hate.
How about Montreal being 7-3 in their last 10?
That's a feel-good story because they were expected to be bad. And you feel good for Patrick Laine, even though I think he might be hurt again or whatever's going on. I still hate the Canadians, but at least there's a good storyline there.
In the West, you have Vegas, who's 8-2 in their last 10, rocketing up to, near the top of that conference. And at the bottom, the usual suspects, Nashville, San Jose, Chicago. And as you mentioned, Evan, Chicago and that performance, there's no world where, Connor Bedard is ever not a Chicago Blackhawk. If anyone has any sanity, but at the same time, you're like, I wonder if this can get bad enough where someone will do something stupid. I would love that.
It's unbelievable to me that they keep getting Winter Classic games considering they've never won one.
Let's make it 6.
Why not? Make it against the Red Wings.
Oh my God.
Isn't Florida getting one next year? Chicago at Florida, the Dale Talon Bowl.
We'll sign Chris Chelios just to scratch him again in his hometown.
Is Babcock back?
I don't know. That's all I had.
All right, let's wrap up this segment and get into the final portion of the Winged Wheel podcast.
We're going to overtime.
Overtime is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast. The bonus episodes, any bonus content we create, the Discord, the Patreon exclusive Discord, and the entry into all of our giveaways, including 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game. Those are your benefits and lots more if you want to join the Dub Dub Club. Let's take some questions from our patrons here. AJ Voss says, was there a main thing that went wrong with Filip Zadina's development? Or was it as simple as he was a bust and we were the only team to not get the memo? Filip Zadina was a talented guy. His story isn't brand new. It happens every single draft. A guy who has a lot of skill and a lot of the tools just doesn't put it together at the NHL level. You saw little spurts from Zadina, especially early on, where you're like, oh yeah, he can be an every year 20 goal scorer. But he did not have the mental game to hang in the NHL and through the tough process that is developing the NHL. Look at a guy like Lucas Raymond. His development didn't happen without effort, and it didn't happen without ebbs and flows. That guy had to grind and build on his strengths and improve his weaknesses and continue to work, and is still working every day. And I'm not saying Filip Zadina didn't put in the effort, but he was you can see the mental hole he put himself in when things would go wrong. And I don't think he was rewarded with the best development or coaching from above, but at the same time, other players did succeed. So ultimately, I think it's the player there.
Yeah, I fall on the category of it's both. Every nuanced this or that conversation, you can argue to degrees of fault, and yeah, more often than not, it's going to fall more on the player. I don't think they developed him very well, but also he couldn't handle the expectations of the NHL. The grind is a good way of putting it. My argument in favor of Zadina, to defend him a little bit, If he was drafted in the second round and didn't play a game in the NHL for 2.5, 3 years after he was drafted, played on the third line, was a 15, 20 guy every year, we'd have loved him. The fan base would have loved him. He'd have been a good story, and he would have probably still, to this day, been able to fill that role capably. But with the expectations of being a 6th overall pick, with the expectations of, coming out of a rebuild and all the success that you should have brought, it weighed on him, and he just couldn't get over that hurdle mentally.
There's also the Quinn Hughes thing. And it's important to note, in case folks don't know, they weren't expecting Zadina to fall to Detroit at 6. And when he did, it was common consensus at the time. There were some folks who were saying Quinn Hughes, but it was common consensus at the time that Zadina was top 3, at worst top 4. And when he fell, Detroit was like, we have to take this. We need goal scoring. And that's what this kid showed that he could do, especially at the junior level and, international tournaments, what have you. But it wasn't going to be Quinn Hughes if it wasn't Philip Zadina. They were taking Evan Bouchard. And if it wasn't Evan Bouchard, it was going to be Noah Dobson. Both would have been fine picks for Detroit, good in different ways. But they told Quinn Hughes, Michigan link and everything, we're not drafting you.
Don't fall victim to revisionist history. There's not a Red Wings fan alive who wasn't absolutely stoked when Zadina fell to us. It's like everyone, 100% of the fan base across the board. I did not see one negative reaction online when we picked it. When was the last time anything happened in the world where people were near unanimous in how they felt about something?
Michigan beating Alabama yesterday.
That's really close. It's a great answer. The second closest thing ever was when Zadina fell to the Red Wings. I was doing backflips. Everybody on my timeline was doing backflips. We were jacked. I remember the whole conversation, the months and months and months we spent previewing that draft and leading up to it was it Bouchard, Dobson, Boqvist, or Hughes? We knew they were taking a defenseman. We were debating the merits of all defensemen. From what we were hearing, Bouchard was going to be the guy. There was not a thought in our head that Zadina would fall, so we didn't even really entertain the thought.
Yeah, and there were, I want to call out, there were people who I remember were adamant about Hughes from day one within the context of Zadina wouldn't fall. So it's not about whether Zadina was a bad pick or not. It's about, some people believed that Hughes' talent would translate and the size wasn't a concern and the ability to defend wasn't a concern. And they were right, but that was a minority and none of that was relevant to Zadina. So it just didn't work out. It's just how it went. And unfortunately, it is with the biggest whiff the Red Wings could have made at that pick.
The one benefit that came from it is it made me start paying a lot closer attention to late birthdays in the CHL near the top of the NHL draft, because Zadina was a late birthday. So he had his 18-year-old year in the CHL going into that draft, and more specifically the Q, which is the weakest of the 3 leagues. And he had fantastic production, but looking at other players that have put that production up at that age, it's nothing special. So now that's why I'm super, super leery of those late birthdays putting up big numbers in the CHL, because that 17-year-old year to your 18-year-old year is the Grand Canyon of differences in terms of evaluating their performance.
Imagine it was even like Dobson. Like, yeah, you didn't get Hughes, you didn't get Bouchard, but you'd be thrilled with Dobson.
Oh, absolutely thrilled. Hell, even Adam Boqvist, who's largely considered a bust, is playing regular minutes for the Florida Panthers right now.
Oh, man. Give Simon the Heart says, Happy New Year's, WWP. Happy New Year's. Give Simon the Heart says, giving you guys a chance to be right in a few months for bragging rights. Guess what pick the Red Wings will get in the 2025 draft?
6.
1. I'm a sicko. I'm positive for 2025.
This is how you know we've been doing this for too long, is I knew what number me and Evan were going to pick, and I knew you were going to pick something different just for the sake of being different.
Not for the sake of being different, for the sake of not saying 6, which I guess is what you mean.
That's
here.
Literally the definition of what I meant there.
I know, but it's not because I needed to be different than you guys. I just didn't want to say 6 again. It just kills me, man. Mr. Kuzi says, this looks like a completely different team. When does the bump wear off and when should the new reality set in? So I referred to this earlier in the episode. I want to be careful to say it's not like I don't think things are going to revert back to what we saw at the start of the season. I think it's just going to be, I think the new reality is a good way to put it. We'll see where things are at the end of the month. This is a dreary time of year, post holidays, January, the grind really starts to set in with injuries and wear. at that February break, we'll see where we're at. But at the end of the month, I think we'll have a good idea of where this team's going to naturally settle into. And that's with no moves being made, right? So,
and the schedule for January is not good. There's a lot of top caliber teams that the Red Wings will be playing.
I also think McLellan himself said about a half dozen games is what it's going to take him to even get a firm grasp of what he's working with. So after that half dozen, you'll start to see all right, he knows what he knows, he likes what he likes, and we'll start to see it from there, I would think.
Future Consideration says, how many games do they play cop between Cat and Kane? It's been okay. He hasn't played a huge role in production, but we have Casper wasting away on the fourth line. Summary, does Todd McLellan give Casper a shot at 2C soon?
I didn't want to bring it up yet because I know people are worried. He is old school in the sense that he doesn't rush them up the lineup.
I'm not too concerned about that. I think
I don't think it's the end of the world.
Because I think he works with what he has, and this isn't a team with a ton of talent. So Joe Veleno is a young player, and he's moved up to the first line. But I think it's...
Joe Veleno's not that young. Same round as Philip Zadina.
I'm aware, Brad. I'm aware. I'm not... Yeah, I think you're going to see every combination possible because eventually things will peter out and you're going to have to find a new combination. And that's the reality of having a team that's not stellar.
He also knows that Marco Casper, it's his first year in the NHL. We don't need to burn this guy out in game 30. Let's put on the gas where we can.
Yeah. The Imperfect Patron says, at this point, I feel like Raymond should get a permanent assistant captain A on his jersey. Thoughts? Is a change like this less likely to happen with the coaching change? I want to see Seider and Raymond permanently. Let's call it what it is. Those two are the face of the team alongside Dylan Larkin. That's what the fans want to see. And I understand you have veterans in Kopp and Sherratt and Compher and Kane. And Kane too, I get that. But Seider and Raymond are the core, the future. They're two of, if not your two best players.
You lock them up the big tickets, right? It's obvious. And those older guys know, right? They're not dumb. They know that they're not part of the long-term future of this team. They know who the upcoming leaders are of this team. I know they're proud guys, but I'm sure they're abundantly aware of that possibility.
And when you're a veteran in the league, you don't need a letter on your jersey to be a leader.
No.
That's what a good leader is, a guy who will lead regardless of that. And if you have a room full of them, there's not enough A's to go around. So
my solution, because they're already rotating the A a little bit, staple the C to Larkin's jersey, staple an A to Raymond's and Seider's, and then rotate the A through Compher, Sherratt. I'm perfectly okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying those guys aren't leaders in the room and don't necessarily deserve a letter.
It's what the fans want, though.
But the future and the core and the future leadership of this team, it's very obvious who those three guys are. Hell, I wouldn't even hate it if they stapled that third one to Edvinsson. Here's your future, work within it.
Chattanooga Wings guy says, obviously incredibly small sample size, but I feel like JT Compher has played a lot better these last 3 games with Todd at the helm. Do you guys agree? Have you noticed anyone else playing substantially better or worse so far? Thanks, boys.
I wouldn't say substantially better, but Compher's definitely been better.
Not extremely bad.
I thought Sherratt's been better as well.
Yep.
I mean, that's a side effect of playing with Seider again.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he's been much more engaged in the game.
Yeah.
I actually thought Rasmussen hasn't been terrible either. He was throwing the body around a little bit last night, had a couple playmaking moments.
I know we talked about it already, and it's the super low-hanging fruit, but Veleno's looked good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dropping the gloves since 1921 says, maybe an oddly specific question, but I haven't been able to find the answer anywhere else. Was at the game against the Caps Sunday and noticed in the third period there was only one ref on the ice. What happened? So that ref actually got injured, so they had to go to a one official system. And when the other official goes down, essentially they change the way they operate on the ice between the linesman and the referee. A lot more skating for that second official.
Well, it's okay, though. There's 20,000 referees in the stands.
That's right. And all of them incredibly objective and unbiased. I will say the Red Wings being an Original Six team and having a history of success, so these fans have been fans a long time. It's a very smart crowd, in terms of watching and reacting to the game. And then it's always funny when you watch the playoffs, for example, and there's a team that's good for the first time. Think of Nashville's Cup run and some of the things they reacted to, and you're like, of course, you're energized and you're excited that your team is winning or has an opportunity to win, but you're like, that's not even close to a penalty. Like, what are you complaining about?
We forgot about the call that got called back last night, the slashing penalty, where they called it a slash on Seider, but he broke his own stick.
Yeah.
I just can't remember the last time any team has had so many calls called back.
Yeah, we have had a lot of weird stuff like that this year.
Yeah, there was the toe pick incident that they called a trip, and the too many men, that wasn't a too many men.
And then the hooking penalty Casper got, where the guy who he hooked ended up getting an embellishment fine for that play.
Dude, he got fined for diving. Like, what bigger indictment that you messed up the call as an official than the player who you said got penalized got a monetary fine for embellishment? You were fooled.
Going back to your point, though, to go on a tangent here.
It makes me, that call pisses me off so much, man.
I know. I'm going to go on a happier, because you were talking about the new fan base thing with them not knowing what a penalty is. You know what's a story I've heard a bunch of times from different people when new fans come in or new markets come in? Do you know what they're fascinated by more than almost anything else in the game of hockey that they can't believe these guys can do?
Fights.
No, change on the fly.
Really?
Yeah, I've heard it so many times. They're like, you'll see these 10 guys on the ice, and then the puck goes down in the corner, and 8 of them get off the ice, 8 more come on, and it's flawless.
That is objectively a hilarious thing about hockey.
Yeah, because like basketball does it at breaks. Football does it in between plays. Baseball doesn't. Like
football, you have to declare certain guys.
Soccer, you have to hold up a sign. Like hockey's the only sport. And when you actually watch it, like next time you're watching a game and you know there's an obvious play where both teams are about to change, just watch the chaos, the controlled chaos of it all. It actually is something crazy about hockey that we take for granted, that 10 guys can get on and off the ice flawlessly 98% of the time.
I think I told this story years ago, but when I played, I think we had a game against Niagara or something, and they had these weird benches that were like an extra 8 inches higher off the ice.
Oh, no.
And when you're younger, right? Like you're not full.
It's up to your chin.
Yeah. And so it's not so much that, it's that when you're climbing over the boards to get on and the guys coming off go through the door. That's how it typically happens in hockey. And it's like you miss a step on the stairs when you're going down the stairs, but every single time, like my back hurt after that series. And it was a best of 5 series. It was game 5. I jumped on the ice, but the guy who's coming off for me made some stupid decision to go down the ice. We're playing defense. He wanted to go join a rush going the other way. I'm like, you're not even close. So I didn't want to get penalized for too many men late in the third period, game 5 tie game. So I had to turn around and skate my ass off to the bench and essentially dive back onto the bench.
I've definitely done that before.
Oh, yeah.
But the problem is I'm not a tall guy. This bench is extra high. So all I did was make one leg over and just sack myself harder than I ever have in my entire life. I barely making it over that bench. I just thinking of climbing over the boards. If they're the wrong height, especially in minor, like you go to the weirdest barns in the world with those quirks, that's one that sticks out to me.
My favorite thing about those, you send too many and you got 6, and everybody on your bench realizes you got 6 out there. But you can't scream at him because then you're tipping the refs off.
Yeah.
I had a game a couple of years ago. It happened and we had too many on. And like, we're all trying to get someone's attention who's close. And one of our wingers started coming past the bench and we didn't want to yell because he was right near a linesman. One of our taller forwards literally just leaned over the boards and hooked him. Like literally just grabbed him with his stick. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? He's like, get off the ice.
Yeah.
And then he's like, what? We had too many. He's like, oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you sometimes see minor hockey coaches do that. They'll just lean over the boards and grab one of the kids by the back of the jersey. Yeah, a little Big Planet character, and they're just dangling there.
Hockey's a weird sport.
Yeah, it is a weird sport. That's a good point. I never would have thought about it. Usually for me, it's people in other sports. Like honestly, NFL and NBA fans, they'll watch hockey and be like, oh my God, they let these guys fight. This is amazing. And like, yeah, this is why no one's impressed whenever you're like, hands being thrown in the NBA and it's just like a shove and they're all like peacocking and nothing ever happens.
The NBA used to be cool.
Yeah.
You used to have to pay in blood to get into the free throw, whatever they call that.
The key. Yeah. And they would give fans batteries to throw at the players. Like
Ron Artest is going up there having fist fights with season ticket holders. Like, yeah, it was a way more immersive experience.
The floor seats were actually cheaper because it came with hazard pay.
Yeah. You never knew when Shaq was going to come flying into the 4th row.
The amount of, there's actually like, Shaq will go in and then it's just like the most hilariously fragile group of people, like a nun, a tiny woman with a baby, you know, a kindergarten classroom all sitting behind, like where Shaq's going down. You're like, oh my God.
There's a clip out there somewhere. I don't remember what teams
I know
are
what
playing.
clip you're already.
But somebody goes to just rip a chest pass to someone to make a 3-pointer. There's nobody there. And there's this old lady beside her other friend on their phone like, hey, look at what my niece in grade 6 did on Facebook. And this ball beans her right in the forehead. And her hair just does like, you know when you touch the electrostatic ball?
Yeah.
Her hair literally just poof. And just the snap back. And that probably hurt like hell. And her neck probably hurt for a long time. But it is the funniest clip.
You know, I forgot to tell you, you know what happened? I don't know if we were having one of these types of conversations on the main episode or in overtime. But we're just going on our absolute bullshit like we are right now. And I said, we need a show where we just talk about random guys. Like, just bring up some random player or event from like 2003. I get a DM later that night or the next day. Will Bakima from Secret Base.
Yeah.
He's like, my guy, have I got a treat for you? And he gives me a Patreon subscription to Secret Base where they have literally a show that is just that.
Amazing.
I am in sports nerd heaven.
Oh, amazing.
Phenomenal.
How did we get here? I don't remember.
I don't even know. I don't care. I'm happy we're here.
It's the end of the episode. It's a day off for everyone. All right, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. Thank you all so very much for tuning in. Again, go to griffinshockey.com/WWP to get tickets to Winged Wheel Podcast Night with the Grand Rapids Griffins. Also, go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org to find out more about Hot Stove Rounding the Bases with Mike Tirico and guests. It's not only that, but there's also a silent auction online as well. Go to jamiedanielsfoundation.org. Get your tickets Tuesday, January 14th. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to support this show. And if you want to support the Winged Wheel Podcast, but Patreon's not for you, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, hitting that subscribe button, leave a rating, whether it's a star rating in the reviews or the thumbs up, and tell a friend about the show. Those are all ways that really, really help. To our Patreon supporters, we could not do this without you. And to all of our name level supporters on Patreon, thank you so, so much as we kick off 2025. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, THL Champ, Samuel Soderholm, Icon, Alexander Hansen, Ghost of OSBP, Glenn Brabham, Cronner's Left Knee, C. Lyon, Matthew M. Rice, Adam Rose, Adam Suiza, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Alec, Asher Killian, Beer League Legend, Best James Bond, Carl Brutina Nanalewski, Carl Provy, Citizen High Five, Clip Clop Nene, Connor Scovey, Craig Kibble, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, Seider, Dickens, formerly Marlon Winchester, DJ Denton, Eric Hill, Give Blood Fight Probert, Goose Looney's Drinking Club, Griffin God Creatives, Hatrick Sandin Pellikka, Hockeytown Love, Hockeytown Matt, Hissam Al Qassem, I Met Larkin Once, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, James McLean, aka Jambo, Jeff Pridemore, John Ingalls, Jonathan Miller, Kalen Wood, Mark Hernandez, brand new name level supporter, Marty, Matt Keeler, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Mr. Kuzi, New Coach, Old Problems, R.A., Roy Donk, Ryan Britt, Scott Martin, She blank Insider, Skeletor, Steven Orteleb, That's What I Appreciate About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, Iserplan Stand, you guys are liabilities. Aaron Hudson, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, AA Ron AB, All Motor No Hands, Ann Stanislavski, Antonio Gracias, Axel Sandin Pellikka, Bellingham Aciballs, Bex, Bring a Bucket and a Mop for this wet-ass chungus, Chimkim Nutgits, Commander Ben Bear in the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Layton and Darren Fick, Datsuk Dangleberries, Deep in Seider, Dylan Larkin, Trade Sacrifice, Eric Nance, Evan Beckner, Frank Stanley, Gene Sullivan, Grepsky, Griffey Boy, James Pridemore, Jeremiah Dobo, Jim, JM Rhapsody, Joey Jojo Shabadoo, Josh Yelton, Chaotic Monkey, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Larkin's Loyal Lemming, Les Grossman's Ungodly Firestorm, Linda Hull, Lonnie Zone, Lucas Raitmond, Mitch Minier, Ophelia, As Good As It Gets, Ryan M, Sam Migliaccio, Steven, That Other Guy, The Hodag, The Hat 123, Trent Thorough, Wings fan in St. Louis, Scott, and your second favorite patron. Thanks so much, folks. Here's to a great year ahead.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to visit wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you'll find links to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find ways to support the show, like Patreon, official podcast merchandise, and more. And don't forget to follow us on X at Winged Wheel Pod, at Ryan Hanna, WWP, at Brad Crisco, and at Hockeytown Evan, as well as Winged Wheel Podcast on Instagram.